Hey everybody, this is Andy, aka Love Retro BTW, across Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. I do a podcast every Saturday called Cafe BTW, a morning gaming podcast, a retrospective look at the wonderful world of retro gaming, from interviews to guests. Join us every Saturday, like a Saturday morning cartoon, starting at 8 a.m., 11 a.m. Eastern. Also, if you're on Twitter, please join the brand new retro gaming community, a place to share, connect, and show your love for the retro gaming community. All the links are down below. And remember, enjoy the Gamers Week podcast.
This time on Gamers Week podcast, if you can make a musical about dying of dysentery, then there's probably literally nothing that you couldn't make a musical of.
Pong, the musical.
Oh, God.
And back and forth and back and forth and score.
I've never thought cruises sounded interesting. It always just like, let's be stuck on this floating thing with a ton of strangers. Let's get norovirus together, and there's no escape.
I've always wanted Legionnaire's disease.
How did you know? Oh my gosh, they have everything here.
It's all inclusive.
The one and only time I went on a cruise, I was deathly ill the entire time.
Ugh.
See?
It wasn't like Vertigo, was it?
It was part of that too, but it happened on the way down there. I remember having an energy drink and a bag of combos, and that
That's a recipe for success.
wrecked me for some odd reason.
I'm so shocked to hear that.
Shut up.
So I'm going to ask you to be specific. Which energy drink, which combos?
I think at the time it was when Monster really had it was no flavor to it. It was just a regular Monster.
Yep.
Monster flavored.
Exactly. And it was horrible. And I don't remember which flavor combos. I think it was like pretzel and nacho cheese.
Please tell me you're recording.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, excellent.
I'm glad that we're going to add that in as.
Und bless you? Yeah.
There's already one. It's called Gesundheit. Come on. You're better than that, man.
You guys are good then?
I'm ready. I don't know if I'm good.
All right. Welcome to Gamers Week podcast. Like the name says, we analyze the best, worst, and weirdest headlines of the past week in the video game industry. This is episode 43, and today is Wednesday, October 12th, 2022. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. My name is Blue Williams, and I'll be your host for today. But I am not alone. I have my two fine co-hosts with me. My first co-host is a man who should never, ever be allowed to use your swimming pool. Just trust me on this. My second co-host secretly wants to be known as the Sausage King of St. Louis. Please say hello to Ryan Payne, a.k.a. Retro Game Brews, and the one and only Donnie G.
I think Donnie is already the Sausage King of St. Louis. I don't think he needs to be known as. In my mind, he's already there.
Well, you would know.
Oh, wow.
And I was a little confused because I thought with the whole Uncut episode that you didn't want me in your pool or your lake or what have you. So,
well, it applies to both of you, really. I almost went with that one, like keep Donnie out of the public parks and the streams, but whatever.
Plop.
All right. Well, before we get started, we want to make sure everybody knows that this weekend is the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. So if you will be attending, be sure to find Donnie G. He will be there. Get a sticker from him, take a picture, have him sign your nipple, do all the good stuff. But But if you're not attending, like I am not and Ryan is not, you can still be part of the action by tuning into the PRGE Twitch channel, which is at twitch.tv/Retro Gaming Expo. Our good friends Redox and Ducks in Disguise will be broadcasting the Blockbuster Video World Championships 3 this weekend on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night. It's going to be a ton of fun, so go follow the channel right now so you don't miss out.
I know Donnie's super excited for this, but I'm also excited for the fact that we'll be able to watch all the action on the Retro Gaming Expo channel. Redox and Ducks put on a fabulous show on their own Twitch streams, so this is sure to be absolutely awesome. But Donnie, you're going, man.
I am. I'm going. I'm leaving on an airplane tomorrow morning at about 11 a.m. I haven't even packed yet. My plan was to write down today all the stuff that I was looking for, like loose manuals and game cases and all that stuff. But that didn't happen. I think I took a nap at some point during the day. So,
What on earth do you need to pack besides your 90s outfit and those shoes?
that's pretty much it.
See, so you're good.
And a pair of lucky underwear. But then again, you don't need luck. You get luck all the time. Screw you. No lucky underwear.
Who wears underwear?
Oh, okay.
Touche. Well, and you'll be doing the Tetris World Championships, right?
I'm going to try and qualify for the Tetris World Championships, but not only am I going to try and do the Classic Tetris World Championship, I did also register for the Blockbuster Video World Championship. However, if they're doing it Sunday night, I won't be, I'm not that confident in myself, but if they do have it, I'll be gone. My flight leaves at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Well, we wish you the best of luck, sir. May
Well,
the
I appreciate
odds
that.
be ever in your favor.
I got to rep the podcast.
Yeah, as always, do not embarrass the podcast.
I'm going to pray for you that you get a lot of long bars as much as possible.
Giggity.
Exactly.
Well played.
All right, well, let's get this show started with our reviews, reactions, and requests. Doongie Forever says, another great episode. Most of the time when I listen to Gamers Week, I find myself yelling at the computer like an old radio show. LOL. Thank you for that noise. Redox says, what a fun episode, except for all the milk talk. I'm looking at you, Retro Game Brews. Shudder.
I'm sorry, I messed up.
Is that all you have to say for yourself?
Yes, just remorse.
All right, and finally, the guilty man said, Mario has pancake ass. This is the kind of gaming talk I can get behind.
Well
behave, baby.
But tis.
And now it's time for the... And for you, those of you who are not fans of Doctor Who, that's
a Dalek, really?
It was my attempt at a Dalek, yes. According to this app, that is a Dalek.
Yeah, I think that app needs to be exterminated.
What's a Dalek?
Oh my God.
It's too difficult to explain. You just got to watch Doctor Who.
That's it. Yeah.
No, my dad used to watch Doctor Who, and I no.
At Donnie G Retro.
Yeah, let him have it.
Scusi.
So every Monday on Twitter, we post our VIP or very important poll. If you'd like to participate, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. This week's question was, what is your favorite Generation 7 video game console and why? Coming in third place was the Nintendo Wii with 20.7%. Coming in second was the PlayStation 3 with 33.4%. And taking this one home was the Xbox 360 at 45.9%. So let's look at some of the comments from our poll. At 180 Stern said PS3. It started slow but kept going with cool Japanese games when the 360 and Wii support had already almost dried up. It's also the first PlayStation I appreciated for great first-party exclusives. Gamer Mom YEG says, Wii because I prefer Nintendo exclusive games and I loved how many of the games use the motion controls. That will be very relevant later. At Jewel Knight Jess said, I just surprised myself, to be honest. Having thought about it a bit, my initial reaction was PS3, but on reflection, I think I had more great memories on the 360. At Def Defiant says, as much as I love the 360, I had two systems that red ringed on me. Ooh. Launch system and a replacement system for Microsoft. So the PS3 got all the love from that point on. And lastly, Mugwump85354173 said the Wii because it had the GameCube in it.
That is an excellent point. You can play Double Dash on the Wii, which is something I did not consider when I made my vote.
No kidding.
All right, Donnie, so why don't we start with you?
Okay, so my choice out of all those particular systems was the PlayStation 3. I had an Xbox 360, albeit briefly. The PS3, whenever I got it, the library wasn't that great, but I remember it started to expand, and the games looked great. I didn't have to pay to play games online, which is what the Xbox 360 required you to do. So if I wanted to play games with my friends, get in voice chat and do all that stuff and play Call of Duty, if I played it on the 360, I had to pay a monthly subscription for it. And I was not about that life, although current Donnie G Retro is about that life because his kids take up most of it. But yeah, for me, it was the PlayStation 3.
Blue, what about you? Guys,
Hello?
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Did we?
I'm sorry, I was muted.
That's an amateur move, Blue.
I have been working on the notes. Screw you.
Excuse me.
So I also went PlayStation 3. I didn't get a 360 until a couple months ago, so it really wasn't a choice for me, though I did mainly hear from people who had them. The problems with the red ring of death, of course, everybody knew about that, so I was like, I don't know about that. And I'll be honest, I just freaking hated the Wii. I hated it with a passion. I hate motion controls. I appreciate what the Wii did for gaming, how it spread it and made it popular among so many non-gamers. And it was accessible for families, for kids, for grandparents. Everybody could find something to play on there. But as a person who didn't need to be roped into gaming, was already very much into gaming, I felt left behind by the Wii. I felt like they were more concerned about making games for casual gamers as opposed to people who just wanted to sit down and play a regular Nintendo game like we were used to without having to mess around with motion controls. So the Wii mania, I was just like, nah, I don't want any part of that. But I went with the PlayStation 3. There were a lot of really great exclusives. Ni no Kuni being my absolute favorite on that console. So I know it's not a popular answer, but definitely PlayStation 3 for me.
Is your pinned tweet still, I like the PlayStation 3, that's the tweet?
I like the PS3. There, I said it.
That's what it was, yes.
It has currently over 1,000 likes, so I know I'm not alone.
Ooh, there you go.
So what about you, Ryan?
I'll go with the Xbox 360 just from a nostalgia standpoint. I never had a red ring of death, which is great. I love that. Halo 2 took up a lot of my time when it came to the Xbox 360. There was, of course, the Xbox Live Arcade, which was kind of a new thing for me as well, being able to download digital games. And I had actually never touched a PS3 until, in a similar sense, until a couple months ago. Ended up buying one on a whim from our good buddy Share Snacks. So I haven't played a single thing on it besides logging in to see if it worked. But I did not hate the Wii, honestly. I had a lot of fun with it. It was something where I was able to bring in friends who were non-gamers to play games with me. So that was great. Mm-hmm. But the Xbox 360 overall was just the one console in that generation that really hooked me in. The Xbox kind of got me back into gaming after a small sabbatical, the original Xbox, but the 360 is what solidified my future of loving games again.
Very nice.
All right, let's move on to our patron shoutouts.
We couldn't do what we do without the help of our gorgeous patrons. Here are the generous folks supporting Gamers Week on Patreon. Gamatroid, Emo-esque, Bill Tucker, Rybread's #1 fan, Fruitcake's #1 stan, Ducks with Thick Thighs, The Wizard of Zardoz, Clayman71, Great Siaman 81, BNT Zillikai, Geek with That, Crunchy Kong, Sherf Snacks, Frank Grande, J&L Game, Love Retro BTW, Steven Sand, Ramboski, Terry Kinnair, Ducks in Disguise, Jim and Colleen, Games with Coffee, Davey PGH, the Red Ox PDX family, including Shannon and Luke, Zach Huge Thanks, Random Retro Dude, Princess Kitty Mew Mew, Rai Rai's Secret Best Friend, and Mega Retro Man. If you like what you hear today, and we really hope you do, please consider joining us on Patreon. Your support helps cover the cost of producing the show, as well as other cool stuff we'll be doing like prizes and giveaways. You'll also gain access to our weekly patron-only bonus cast called Gamers Week Uncut, Patrons with Benefits. Visit patreon.com/gamersweek or follow the link in the show notes to learn more. If you don't become a patron, every day you'll step in a wet spot and have soggy socks for the next week. So become a patron today to avoid this mildly frustrating experience.
Ryan seems intent on cursing our listeners. I apologize for his behavior. He has done this without consulting the entire podcast.
So far, so good, man.
But I like it.
All right, let's move on to our headline segment, which is, of course, proudly sponsored by the Retro Game Club podcast. It's a fantastic, family-friendly retro gaming podcast. In each episode, Rob and Hugh pick 2 games to play and discuss, as well as news, interviews, and other topics. Right now, they want to hear your memories of the Sega CD in honor of the add-on's 30th anniversary.
Oh.
Send your answers to email at retrogameclub.net or follow the link in the show notes to learn more.
My beloved system.
So what are your memories of the Sega CD then?
Man, my friend had a Sega CD. He was the only person I knew that had a Sega CD. He wasn't rich by any means, but his parents would get him video game systems. He's the only kid I think I knew that had a Philips CDI, a Panasonic 3DO.
Oh, dang.
I don't think he had a Neo Geo. However, I could be wrong. But I remember spending the night at his house, and that was the first time I touched Night Trap and Sewer Shark. And I stayed up, like we tried to do it. We tried to time, like we tried to write down the times as to when the AUGs or the augers would be in the certain rooms and stuff like that. It became a daunting task. And I know somebody did it many years later. That's how a lot of people were able to beat that game. But he'd go to bed and I'd sit there and just try to play it and play it and play it. And I just had so much fun with it.
Yeah, I'd be over at his house every night.
Mom, I just wanted to let you know I'm applying for adoption papers.
Right. It's not personal. They just have way better video games.
Right.
All right. From Eurogamer, Modern Warfare 2 has the same phone number problem as Overwatch 2. Those who are going to be diving into Modern Warfare 2 via PC on its launch will face the same problem as those going into Blizzard's recently released Overwatch 2. You will need to link a phone number to access the game, and a prepaid plan may not work. If you head on over to the phone notifications page on the battle.net support site, you will see text stating that those playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 or those with newly created Overwatch 2 accounts and newly created Call of Duty Modern Warfare accounts will be required to add phone numbers to access the game. The page continues, adding a phone number will allow Blizzard Entertainment to send you notifications when important changes are made to your account. Any mobile phone in a supported country with a data plan, and that is not prepaid or a VoIP number, can be used with this service. Blizzard stated any Overwatch 2 player with a connected Battle.net account, which includes all players who have played since June 9th, 2021, will not have to provide a phone number to play its game. Others, however, will still need to, as the company sees this as a key factor in reducing disruptive behavior, claiming it will help stop banned users creating a new account as a nefarious workaround to get back into the game.
Yeah, I don't buy that.
Me neither.
No, I don't think that this has anything to do with them trying to stop disruptive behavior. I think they just want as much information as they can possibly get on the people playing their game so that they can market the hell out of you.
Sounds right.
And bear in mind that allows them to be a data broker as well, similar to what Facebook does. So
pretty much
that's a revenue stream for them potentially. I don't know if it says that in the terms and conditions as to whether or not they plan to sell your data or not, but the fact
that they do.
Oh, of course. But that would be something I would be looking for, because I bet you it's in there and nobody's checking it out, because who reads the terms and conditions?
Right. I just want to play the game.
I do. I realize I'm not the only person in the world who does, but I always do.
But yeah, that sounds to me like a great revenue stream for them, and more spam text messages and calls for me.
Well, and one of the things that I was thinking of is this is kind of an income barrier, I guess, because this ensures that people who, for whatever reason, maybe can't afford a phone with a traditional phone plan, they won't be able to play this game, even though aren't they free to play games?
The Warzone portion of Modern Warfare is free to play.
Okay, so that's even shittier. If you pay for the game and then you decide, I don't want to give them my phone number, then you've just wasted your $70,
right.
$60,
Absolutely.
however much it is.
Absolutely.
Right. And to your point, one of the things, at least in the US, when it comes to cell phone accounts, is you have to have at least decent credit in order to be on, one of the major carrier plans. And the option for a lot of folks that don't have, stellar credit or what have you, have to go with a prepaid phone or pay a ridiculous deposit of like $750 per line. At least that's the way it used to be. I don't know if it's still that's the case. But to your point, there are a lot of people that want to play this. And aren't you limiting the audience that you can have potentially? Now, I get that it's a security feature because obviously...
No, it's not.
Well, in the sense that obviously if I got banned, I could just buy a quote unquote burner phone and set that up. But it has these unintended consequences that are going to affect a lot more people than I think they anticipate.
There is no way in hell that if I buy Modern Warfare 2, that I'm going to provide them with my phone number just so they can market at me. You can take a look at my account. I play it on PC. So I would think that if you see me logging in, my account doesn't have any strikes against it, then I'm fine.
Yeah, it's a flimsy excuse at best, and it's a really rotten thing to do to your full price paying customers. Like, it's still pretty crappy if you were doing it for like a free to play game, like if they were doing it for Warzone. But I mean, on the one hand, it's a free to play game. Okay. But you're paying customers and you're just selling them out because you want to sell their data under the guise of, no, it's for your own safety.
Right. It's like, so we can give you a better gaming experience so you don't have to run into hackers all the time. Well, maybe if you did your job with a better anti-cheat, then I wouldn't have to deal with this.
That's right. I mean, they already got people to install those kernel level anti-cheats on their computers. So I suppose they're like, yeah, these people will do anything we ask them to do. They'll totally give us their phone numbers.
That's the consensus.
Yep.
Like, what if you're if you have kids and your kids decide to use your phone number for their account and all of a sudden you both get locked out? I don't know. Does Blizzard have a stellar customer service line that I can call to get that fixed quickly? Because I'm going to guess no. So,
well, if you're in the highest tier of their loyalty program.
There you go.
I just see so many problems from this arising. Again, the idea of unintended consequences through this. And
right.
At the end of the day, if they really want to be able to track people who are trying to game the system, it's a lot easier to do that by tracking someone's actual PC than it is having them put in all this additional information.
Yeah. I guarantee when news of this came out, anybody who works in customer service for Blizzard just went, because now their phone lines are just going to be even more flooded than they already are with people trying to deal with this problem.
Thanks, Blizzard.
That's a theme over the last 10 years.
Yeah, it kind of is. You got to hand it to Blizzard because they must put out some absolutely killer games. The fact that people continue to put up with all of their bullshit and keep playing their stuff.
Indeed.
So I guess hats off to them there.
Next up, from the Washington Post, Meta's Quest Pro costs as much as a new PS5, Xbox, and Quest 2 combined. If there were any doubts that Meta's virtual reality experimentation would prioritize workplace productivity over games, they vanished Tuesday when the company revealed the price of its latest VR headset, the Quest Pro, $1,499. No, that's not a typo. For nearly the same price as one Quest Pro, consumers could purchase a PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and a Quest 2 VR headset. The announcement of the Quest Pro's price tag, which was made during October 11th's Meta Connect event, serves as a hard pivot from its consumer-friendly pricing of the Quest 2, the previous version of Meta's VR set that debuted in 2020. The Quest 2 first retailed at $299 for the cheapest model, and $399 for one with expanded storage. Meta raised the price tag on both versions by $100 earlier this year, citing supply chain and production issues. The rationale behind the pricing of the relatively affordable Quest 2 was fairly simple: get more people on VR. With more users, software publishers would have more incentive to develop games and other apps, which have been sparse to date, knowing that there was a larger potential consumer base on the way. That logic goes out the window when you slap a $1,500 price tag on a new platform. Instead, it's replaced by questions. The first of which is, who is this for? Because it is absolutely not for gamers. Previously, it seemed as though Meta was throwing open wide the doors to its virtual worlds by enticing consumers with access to VR for a few $100s. Now the invitation, carrying a cover charge of $14.99, seems a lot less enticing. And if consumers shy away, will software makers follow suit? And can I get bottle service with that $14.99?
Yeah, I was going to ask. So are you guys lining up for this one? Day one purchase, right?
No. You kidding me?
If it's the Oasis, the actual Oasis, I will spend $1,500. Otherwise, not a chance.
Right.
Anything that Meta does is not going to come even close to the freaking Oasis. I mean, this is stupid. Like, I get it. The Quest Pro does not erase the existence of the Quest 2. So there is still a affordable way to get into the metaverse if that is your desire. But I mean, if you think about the difference between like the cost of the PS4 being, I don't know, $400, and then if they put out a PS4 Pro, then be like, all right, this is $1,700.
Yeah.
They would have been ridiculed, and rightly so. Nobody would really want to buy that when it doesn't do all that much more. And Meta's target here is not really gamers, but it's businesses. And they are wanting this thing to replace PCs, workplace PCs, essentially, and try to get people to do all the things you would do on a workplace PC on the Quest Pro. But your metaverse is completely unproven still. Why on earth would anybody want to put down this kind of money when they have no idea if your stupid experiment is actually going to produce anything worthwhile?
Are you serious about that? They want the Quest to replace a workstation PC?
Well, when you look at the programs that it has included, and let me just look up a whole list.
Wait, is this Excel on the VR?
So this is from Oculus.com. Mixed reality on MetaQuest Pro lets you combine your physical environment with virtual elements in a realistic way, leading to enhanced social presence, productivity, and collaboration. Instead of being confined to the dimensions of your desk, you can set up a big virtual workspace with multiple screens spread all around you while still using your physical keyboard and mouse in productivity apps like Immersed. Or if you're a furniture designer, you can create 3D models with other people in real time using Archeo and Gravity Sketch, and then see how they look in your actual living room. And with presence platforms, scene understanding, and shared spatial anchors, developers can build virtual objects that interact with your physical space, even in co-located experiences where two or more people can play or work together in VR at the same time. None of that means anything to me.
No. I mean, I kind of understand it. If you work in a field that allows you to use one of these things, okay, on a daily basis.
From it, yeah.
Right. But if I'm a data entry person, I don't want to wear a headset all day just to put formulas in.
No.
And that doesn't make any sense.
But Game Pass is going to work on the Quest Pro, so you could spend all that money to still play the same
No.
2D games that you play anywhere else.
I know exactly how that crap works. In a corporate setting, they would disable gameplay on the VR headset. I've been down that road. No, thank you.
I don't know. I've seen so many videos of people injuring themselves while wearing a VR headset. And I was just thinking to myself, like, I wonder what the insurance claim is on that one. Do you get workers' comp for tripping and falling into your wall because you thought you were shaking someone's hand at work? Is that
like, konnichiwa, back.
Yeah, that will kill it right off, I think.
On the works calendar, they've got everybody like the list of injuries, like it's the NFL.
It has been one day since our last accident.
The only other people that I would anticipate that this would be attractive to is influencers and celebrities, because it's a social status thing. I can afford $1,500 for my gaming setup.
Oh, you mean you can't afford it? Oh my God.
Right.
You should start a GoFundMe for that.
But the beauty of Instagram is that that's owned by Facebook, so they could conceivably gift these out.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's the same principle as, high-end luxury brands, right? It's a t-shirt, but it costs $200.
Right.
When I can get a t-shirt that does the same thing, and maybe even a knockoff one that it doesn't say Supreme on the chest. It says, Sublime or something.
Supreme burrito.
Yeah, but I don't think, at least amongst gamers, this is never going to have the same flex as, super high-end PC that you built yourself with all the fancy lights and all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
As cool as Meta is trying to make this sound, it still comes from Meta.
And we're not there yet, Meta.
No, we're not.
As much as you want us to be, when your whole VR space looks like Second Life and The Sims had a baby, I don't want to spend that much money to visit your oasis.
Right. And it seems like the whole point of this thing is to be able to interact with other people who also have it. So if you don't sell enough of these things, then they become kind of pointless.
Exactly.
All right, next up from IGN, Final Fantasy VII Battle Royale: The First Soldier shutting down barely a year after launch. Square Enix has announced that its mobile battle royale Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier will shut down on January 11 next year, barely a year after it was released. Announced on the game's website, Square Enix said that it couldn't deliver the service it wanted to despite fairly regular updates to the game, and as a result decided to shut The First Soldier down. The game was only announced at the beginning of 2021 and launched on November 17 that year. Similar to other Battle Royale games, including Fortnite and Apex Legends, The First Soldier had rolling seasons that brought new changes to the game. Square Enix hoped it would bring Battle Royale fans into the world of Final Fantasy, encouraging them to check out other games in the series, such as 2020's Final Fantasy VII Remake. Despite the news of The First Soldier's closure, Final Fantasy fans will still have a lot to look forward to. A remake of Final Fantasy VII prequel Crisis Core will be released this December, while the true sequel to remake Final Fantasy VII Rebirth will launch the following winter. Stepping away from Final Fantasy VII and its spin-offs, the next mainline numbered entry arrives next summer with Final Fantasy XVI.
Is anyone terribly surprised that they're shutting this down?
Well, I wonder if that's the real reason. Oh, we couldn't deliver the experience we wanted. Is that really it? Or did you find out that people actually didn't want a Final Fantasy VII themed mobile shooter battle royale?
It's like you took the two genres that are almost diametrically opposed to each other. People who play RPGs typically don't, and I'm generalizing here, play first-person shooters, and people who play first-person shooters don't typically play RPGs. So what were you expecting? Were you trying to, what was the demographic, I guess, that you were trying to get out of this? Now, if you played it and you loved it, I'm sorry. I know that there are exceptions to every rule, but honestly, this just wasn't going to have mass appeal from the get-go.
Well, I think what you kind of answered your own question. What were they expecting? They were expecting people to jump on the bandwagon that is Final Fantasy VII, or the popularity that is Final Fantasy VII. Oh, okay, a trading card game that's based on Final Fantasy VII. Oh, you know what? I like Final Fantasy VII. Maybe I'll give it a shot. Or it's a strategy game based on Final Fantasy VII. Oh, I like Final Fantasy VII. I'll give it a shot. They could have done a myriad of things involving this particular brand, and if it works, great. They have a home run. If not, we cut our losses and we move on, because they continue to make profitable IPs. So taking a risk on this one, I think, is probably they realized they could have done it, and if they failed, they just shut it down. Now, what sucks, I don't know anything about this game, so I don't know if it's a free-to-play game or anything like that. But if you've spent money on this thing and all of a sudden they shut it down, what kind of repercussions do you have?
Right.
I think that anytime anyone spends money on a live service game, you might as well just consider it gone.
Pretty much.
And it's gone.
And it's gone. Yeah, exactly. Because that game could shut down literally at any moment. So yeah. I wouldn't expect, any sort of real return on whatever it is that you've invested. But I don't know. Do you think that there's finally some Final Fantasy VII fatigue?
Absolutely. 100%.
I would be okay if I never heard anybody talk about Final Fantasy VII ever again. I'm so sick of that game.
bold statement there.
And it's not the game's fault. The original is, I can say that it's a good game, even though I don't personally enjoy it. It's still a great game. It did a lot for RPGs. Mm-hmm. But Square Enix has beaten this horse to death and then beat it again in the afterlife. And they have to let it, they have to stop. They have to let it rest because nobody cares anymore.
Well, and they also tried this once before. It was the Dirge of Cerberus
right.
first-person shooter, and that did not do well at all. So it's almost like they didn't learn from that lesson. But you're right. There is just so much Final Fantasy VII coverage. But what's interesting now is I've noticed that over the last, say, 2 or 3 years, it's gone from the cool thing to like Final Fantasy VII to now the cool thing is to not like Final Fantasy VII.
I hated Final Fantasy VII before it was cool.
And that's fine, you know what? But it just seems like everybody nowadays on Twitter is like, Final Fantasy VII, most overrated RPG of all time. 3 years ago, they were like, oh my God, it's so good, you got to play it. So
right.
It's the tides of love have shifted.
The tables have turned.
I don't know if Square Enix will learn anything from this, but I would just really like to see them stop doing all this weird side stuff and just focus on their main series titles. We don't need any more rhythm games. We don't need any more chocobo racing games. And we don't need any mobile shooters. Just focus on your mainline Final Fantasy titles, and we will all love you for it.
And maybe that means that you come out with other games that are much more well put together than things like Balan Wonderworld.
Right.
Here's to hoping.
All right, next from Nylon, beloved video game Oregon Trail to become a musical film.
Yes! You have died of dysentery.
The creators of Oregon Trail computer game have been capitalizing on the drama and intrigue of this particular part of American history since the game was released in 1971. Now the game is moving from our collective computer class nostalgia to land of 3-part harmonies. It's going to be adapted into a musical, and in an interview with Collider, filmmakers Will Speck and Josh Gordon shared that they have been collaborating with songwriting team Benj Pasek and Justin Paul to make a darkly comedic musical version of the video game in a reboot that actually feels original and not like it's just trying to capitalize on the core memories of childhood. So, Donnie, that might very well be a tune based off of this. The game always had this dark band of humor running through it because your chances of dying from everything from dysentery to a cut to anything, basically every move you ended up dying, Gordon said. We're returning to a little bit of our roots in comedy, marrying it with the fun of doing a big musical, as well as just the ambition of taking that very seriously, as well as making a big historical Western expansive epic that's also about dying from dysentery. Unsurprisingly, this isn't the first time the torrid, dusty tale of Oregon Trail has inspired a musical. In 2014, musical titled The Trail to Oregon parodied the computer game in a stage version. I really want to see that one.
You got to be able to find that on YouTube, I would think. But who had Oregon Trail musical on their 2022 bingo card?
I did not.
I did not. Going to be relying on that free space instead.
It's like, what other games are they going to make musical? Like, could they potentially make musicals out of? Like Lara Croft or God of War or a modern warfare musical?
Yeah, I think that if you can make a musical about dying of dysentery, then there's probably literally nothing that you couldn't make a musical of.
Pong, the musical.
Oh, God.
And back and forth. And back and forth and score.
Well, and the thing about it, though, is it really just sounds like a punchline. But this songwriting team that they're talking about, Benj Pasek and Justin Paul, they have done some legit stuff. They did La La Land and The Greatest Showman. So there's actually quite a bit of songwriting pedigree behind this thing, as ridiculous as it does sound on the surface. I don't really like musicals, but I will definitely be seeing this one just out of morbid curiosity.
So the one thing that's difficult though about Oregon Trails, there isn't really like a unified story. There isn't specific characters, like you name all your characters yourself and stuff, and it's all about your choices, which could be a hindrance, but also it opens up the possibility for them to inject some really good storytelling potentially. It sounds like, though, with the pedigree, that's definitely what's going to happen, and I'm excited for it.
It's going to have to be one of those scripts starts off with like a zillion characters at the beginning so that you can have them all die along the way and be whittled down to maybe just 2 or 3 at the end.
It's the George R.R. Martin of musicals.
So who is Chris Pratt going to star in Oregon Trail, the musical?
He's going to be your ox.
He's going to voice the ox.
Yeah, but this is fun. I it's not taking it. Obviously, I don't think it's taking itself too seriously. It sounds like it's going to be funny too. So I love that kind of stuff. With the Mario movie, I think people are really have high expectations for it. I don't know if you can have high expectations for an Oregon Trail musical. So you can just go in and have fun.
It's one of those movies it's like one of those movies that it's so ridiculous and over the top that you have to suspend all your disbelief and just go in there and knowing that you're going to have a good time or hoping to have a good time. And I hope that this was what Oregon Trail, the musical, will provide us.
Although I can't wait for the first trailer to release and have the internet go, well, this doesn't look like the game at all.
This looks like
It's just not enough 2D pixels in this movie.
Look at all the colors. Oh, my God.
Right. Oh, my God. Black and green? Come on. That should be the whole movie.
Here, please put on these black and green goggles when entering the theater.
All right. Let's take a look at our top 3 new releases.
Scorn, Xbox Series X and S, Xbox One, PC. Scorn is an atmospheric first-person horror adventure game set in a nightmarish universe of odd forms and somber tapestry, where the unsettling environment is a character itself. Every location contains its own story, puzzles, and characters that are integral in creating a cohesive world. Throughout the game, you will open up new areas, acquire different skill sets and weapons, and try to comprehend the sights presented to you. No More Heroes 3. PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Travis Touchdown is back, baby! The otaku assassin takes up his trusty beam katana once more to slash his way to the top of the galactic superhero rankings and save the world in the latest entry in the No More Heroes series. Lego Brick Tales, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Embark on an epic adventure across a world of beautiful Lego diorama biomes, crafted brick by brick as you search for inspiration to help your grandfather reinvigorate his rundown amusement park with your little robot buddy in tow. Your journey will take you to the deepest jungle, sun-drenched deserts, a bustling city corner, a towering medieval castle, and tropical Caribbean islands. Help the minifigures of these worlds by solving puzzles and unlock new skills throughout the story to further explore these worlds and uncover the many secrets and mysteries they contain. So based on the descriptions for these 3 games, Blue, what's your choice this week?
This is kind of a tough one. I don't like the look of this Lego Brick Tales, so I'm going to say no on that. No More Heroes 3. I've only played one game in this series, the previous one, Travis Strikes Back. And while I think the humor is really appealing, I did not like the gameplay at all, which kind of leaves me with Scorn. It's first person, which is not my favorite at all, but the visuals look really interesting. And I do like games where you have to explore. It kind of seems like it might be really melodramatic, which I don't know if I'm that into, but I think that would probably be the one that I would be most likely to check out.
Nice.
Okay. Ryan, what about you?
So No More Heroes. I've never played any of those games in the series, so probably not going to start with 3. Lego Brick Tales, the idea of building a rundown amusement park reminds me of Roller Coaster Tycoon a little bit, but in 3D. So yeah, that could be fun. But Scorn looks awesome to me. The visuals are like a Cronenberg light, if you will.
Right.
even though, yeah, it's first person, it seems like it's a really eerie, dark, kind of damp environment, which could be a lot of fun, especially with the lights off. So Scorn would probably be my choice for this week.
Have you converted to body horror?
Not completely, because I still find Hellraiser to be disgusting.
We have such sights to show you.
I did love that meme where it's we have such sights to show you, and it was the Cenobites, and there's a guy who's at a drive-through window that goes, I said I wanted the Cenobites.
Cenobites.
All right, Toddy, what about you?
No More Heroes. I've heard of the game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't it first come out on PS2 or something like that? PS3?
Fantastic question.
No More Heroes, the original one.
2007.
2007. So that would have been PS3, maybe, right?
Yeah. Wii, PS3, Xbox 360.
Okay. It didn't look interesting to me whenever it came out. So playing the third one in the series is probably not going to happen for me. I did look at Lego Brick Tales. It looks aesthetically pleasing. I don't know about the overall gameplay. I am a big fan of the Lego games, like the Lego Marvel Superheroes, the Lego Indiana Jones, Lego Star Wars, etc. So I think I might have fun playing this game if it were kind of like that. However, looking at Scorn, whenever I started looking at these visuals, it immediately gave me an H.R. Geiger vibe.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm just like, okay, this is right up my alley. Yes, it's a first-person shooter, but I think that actually adds to the overall experience, like getting to look all around and going up to a specific thing on the wall and seeing the texture, seeing the liquid just drip down from it. Probably going to creep me out and give me goosebumps. So I think I'm going with Scorn this week.
I can't wait to have this terrible experience playing this game.
Well, we're clean sweep and Scorn this week, so apparently we all feel that way.
There it is. All right, so as you guys know, we are giving away a copy of the repro version of Secret of Mana 2, which is the third game in the Secret of Mana series. I can't pronounce the Japanese version of it, so I'm just going to say Secret of Mana 2, but
it's for the best.
It's for the best, right? So we wanted to say congratulations, but before we do that, drum roll, please. Congratulations to Fractured Divide. Congratulations, buddy. Hopefully you enjoy the game. I know that you're a big fan of Secret of Mana already, so looking forward to sending this to you. So feel free to reach out to us via DM to send us your details, and we will ship the game to you right away.
All right, let's move on to our main topic for the evening. From IGN, Xbox calls PlayStation too big to fail following UK agency's criticism of Activision Blizzard deal. Xbox has developed a novel tactic for defending its Activision Blizzard acquisition, self-deprecation. In response to concerns raised by the UK's Competition and Markets Authority, Microsoft released a lengthy statement to gamesindustry.biz calling the criticism unsupported and pointing to PlayStation's leading place in the market as a reason why. The suggestion that the incumbent market leader with clear and enduring market power could be foreclosed by the third largest provider as a result of losing access to one title is not credible, Microsoft said in a statement. While Microsoft didn't share figures, the company says that if every Call of Duty player on PlayStation's consoles switched to Xbox, the PlayStation gamer base remaining would be significantly larger than Xbox. In short, Sony is not vulnerable to a hypothetical foreclosure strategy, and the referral decision incorrectly relies on self-serving statements by Sony, which significantly exaggerate the importance of Call of Duty and neglect to account for Sony's clear ability to competitively respond, Microsoft's statement said. While Sony may not welcome increased competition, it has the ability to adapt and compete. Gamers will ultimately benefit from this increased competition and choice.
Xbox as a platform, which is in last place in console, 7th place in PC, and nowhere in mobile game distribution globally, has no incentive to do this. Instead, its incentive is to encourage the widespread adoption of cloud gaming technologies by as many providers as possible to encourage the major shift in consumer behavior required for cloud gaming to succeed. The statement read, As noted by The Verge's Tom Warren, Xbox also claims that Sony has chosen to block Game Pass from PlayStation while protecting its own first-party games. Throughout its response, Xbox emphasizes Sony's strength in the market while positioning itself as a weaker competitor. It's all part of a major attempt to influence global opinion on the acquisition, which will add World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, and other major franchises to a stable that already includes the likes of Halo, Fallout, and Skyrim. Even going so far as to open a website touting the benefits of the acquisition. Sony, for its part, has slammed the buyout as having major negative implications for gamers, while praising the CMA.
Xbox was responding to the CMA's initial report, the full text of which was published today. The CMA says it fears Microsoft absorbing a third-party company as expensive as Activision Blizzard will be damaging to the PlayStation brand. Alongside the possibility of making Activision Blizzard games like Call of Duty exclusive to Xbox and Windows platforms, the CMA points out having those games exclusively on Microsoft services like Xbox Cloud Gaming could have similar implications for video game streaming platform competitors like Amazon and Nvidia. The CMA is concerned that having full control over this powerful catalog, especially in light of Microsoft's already strong position in gaming consoles, operating systems, and cloud infrastructure, could result in Microsoft harming consumers by impairing Sony's, Microsoft's closest gaming rival, ability to compete as well as that of other existing rivals and potential new entrants, who could otherwise bring healthy competition through innovative multi-game subscriptions and cloud gaming services, the authority wrote in its report. The CMA's investigation will continue into January, when it will release its second phase of findings. The final report will be complete by March 1st of next year.
So just to clarify, the CMA does not stand for Country Music Awards, right?
That's what I was thinking the entire time.
Not in the UK.
Long neck bottle.
Though I'm sure they do love their country music.
Oh, they're huge fans.
Huge fans of country music.
Huge.
So this squabbling match between Sony and Microsoft is getting kind of ugly. I really like that Microsoft is not pulling any punches when it comes to its response on this. Mm-hmm. And I think they have a lot of legitimate complaints here, because it seems that while this buyout is being scrutinized in different countries across the world, the majority of the case against them seems to be led by PlayStation, who are only concerned about their own interests.
Right.
If I were Microsoft, I would be upset that this buyout was being colored in that way. It should be evaluated independent of whatever happens to poor Sony.
Poor Sony.
Poor Sony, who will lose out on Call of Duty console players.
Right. And that's the thing I doesn't. So based on what they said in the article, that even if Microsoft took away Call of Duty players, the PlayStation fan base or player base would still rival that of Xbox. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a case of Sony just not wanting to give up too much of its pie. It's like, nope, you can have this little sliver, this little teeny piece, and we get to take everything else. Like,
right.
No.
Well, I mean, they make some really good points, like the incumbent market leader, as a result of losing access to one title, and you're the market leader. That's not a valid complaint.
No.
And also the fact that Sony blocks Game Pass on its consoles, which, right. I mean, on the one hand, you're like, of course it does. Why would it allow Game Pass? That'd be stupid. However, it does go contrary to everything that Sony is arguing about. Microsoft is like, everybody should be able to play games regardless of wherever. PlayStation is only using that argument when it suits them here. For the rest of their business decisions, they're like, nah, exclusives, have it our way.
It's like Sony trying to, have their cake and eat it too kind of thing.
Right.
Where they want to control the narrative. And even though they're doing things that are currently counterintuitive to their argument, they're not willing to let those go. So if you're going to say all these things are preventing, us from being able to compete in the marketplace. Oh, by the way, though, we still do that over here, but don't look over here, more or less.
Right. It's super hypocritical.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, like, this is something that we touched on a couple of episodes ago. Like, this is the that we saw back in the 90s when
I was just thinking that
you have exclusives to Sega, you have exclusives to Nintendo, and the whole thing was, shell out the extra money, go buy the other system. That's what the whole console wars were based on. I know people today, they don't really want to hear anything about console wars and fanboys of whatnot, but that's just competitive marketing. That's capitalism at its finest.
I'm even more reminiscent of the lawsuit that was going on between essentially the U.S. government and the video game industry, where they were talking about censorship. And, of course, your favorite game, Night Trap, was front and center for that conversation. But it was such an ugly battle between Sega and Nintendo, where they were shooting all these different accusations back and forth at each other. I mean, those hearings were so incredibly ugly and divisive, and it just sounds like it's the same thing, like Howard Lincoln 2.0, more or less, between these two, right? Because if you remember, right, he said things like, "Oh, we'll never have a Night Trap version on a Nintendo console.
We'll never have this filth on a Nintendo console."
Right. We're the good guys. They're the bad guys. And they all did that just so that they would look better at the end of the day to some committee that was running stuff for the U.S. government.
Of course.
So it's the same squabble, different topic.
But on the other hand, it's not just about Xbox. It's about Microsoft.
Right.
In the quarter ending June 30 of 2022, they have made almost $200 billion of revenue just in that last fiscal year. Microsoft has.
Peanuts.
So they're an enormous company, and Microsoft itself, anybody who's ever used a PC knows how Microsoft is all about monopolies.
Absolutely.
However, they may try to paint, poor Xbox, we're in last place. We're in 7th place in PC. We're not a real important competitor here. Yeah, maybe Xbox is not, but Microsoft is. And so I do think that this is a deal that does need to be looked at for monopoly implications. I just don't think that Sony should be the one driving it.
Well, Sony in the same breath is still a much larger company than Sony, and interactive entertainment too. So they both have the capital to play around with. Poor Nintendo doesn't, but they're doing okay too.
Yeah, they're not struggling.
But you're right. Microsoft has, in the past, especially in the late 90s, set it up so that they were the only way realistically to get a PC, access the internet. And that came down as a monopoly, an antitrust case, and they lost that. So it's not like there isn't precedence when it comes to Microsoft.
And I think people would probably, if this ever went to court, people would probably look back on that and see like, well, I mean, look at the stranglehold you had back in the 90s with the PC market. And so they might bring that up, and Microsoft's going to be like, we kind of were hoping, that's in the past. Why are you constantly bringing that to the past? I thought we were moving forward.
But at the end of the day, what impact is this going to have on gamers? I think that's the one thing that we as a community should be focused on. Is this really going to have as a negative impact as Sony says? Is it going to have less of an impact as Microsoft says? My guess is it's somewhere in between. And as things play out and the cards are laid down, I appreciate an investigation like this because it gives us a better insight into what the impact is going to be to us.
Yeah. Well, and I was interested in that because, as it says, Microsoft put out a whole website about this, trying to put forward their side of the argument about why the deal should be allowed to go through and the benefits of it. And so I'm looking at this chart they have on that website, and it says it's got 3 categories: benefits for players, benefits for game creators, and benefits for the gaming industry. So as far as benefits for players, it says more games on more devices, including Xbox, PlayStation, phones, and online. Choice in how and where people buy games with subscription and one-off purchase options. And for the 95% of gamers who play on phones, alternatives to gaming offerings from the dominant mobile platforms.
95?
Yeah, I don't know about that number. As far as benefits for the industry, it says more competition in mobile, where a couple of big players dominate. Yeah. Greater competition in traditional gaming, where Sony and Nintendo will remain the biggest. Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Sega.
Emphasis on positive workplace culture and increased local investment from Microsoft in studios and creative ecosystems around the world.
It sounds like they took this from a marketing PR book somewhere.
They totally did.
Like, what are the buzzwords we can choose for this?
Right.
And man, does this sound political, putting out your own website to state your case. sounds like something you would do in politics.
Yeah, my name is Phil Spencer, and I approve this message.
We done did careful market research of all very specific people within the Microsoft organization, right? And they all feel that we have a leg to stand on. Right.
Greater competition in traditional gaming, where Sony and Nintendo will remain the biggest. I don't see how this will make greater competition. Where the big three continuing to consolidate, I don't see how that makes greater competition.
But it sounds really good.
Right. It just confuses the hell out of me.
And that's the point. If you don't really know what they're saying, you're just going to smile and nod.
And the shell is now over here. And you're like, oh, pretty lights. Okay.
And meanwhile, somebody pickpocketed your wallet.
Yep. My wallet's gone.
All right, before we move on, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor. This segment is proudly sponsored by the Leadus Podcast. It's a show where three friends and occasional guests play games about video games, including trivia, game show games, and more. Here is this week's trivia question. Let's get spooky. There's a plethora of horror games out there, each with their own spin on presentation. Jump scares, creepy binaural ambience, flashlight battery life. One such feature, though, was patented by Nintendo, the Sanity Meter. Can you name the first Nintendo game that featured it? Hint, it's in the name. Tune in to the Leadus Podcast this Wednesday to hear the answer. You can find the Leadus on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll also have their links in the show notes.
So any guesses?
I know this. I know I do. The Sanity Meter immediately comes to mind.
I think it's redacted.
Nailed it.
Woo.
Is that on GameCube?
Yep.
Uh-huh.
This is one of the few recently that I knew right off the bat, and I was pretty proud of myself because the last, 10, I've been like, moo. All right. Thank you for coming, students. Please take your seats. Welcome back to Professor Rybrad's Gaming History 101. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about everyone's favorite gaming gimmick. No, I'm not talking about DLC or NFTs. I'm talking about the early history of motion controls.
Boo.
So I know Blue hates motion controls. Donnie, what's your thoughts on them?
I kind of like them, depending on how they're used. I remember when the one of the very first motion controls I think I remember was the gauntlet thing, the Power Glove.
Yep.
Okay, very early iteration of motion controls that did not go over very well. It was well before its time. Then the Wii came out, and I was like, oh, this is a fun little gimmick. It gets people up and gets them active. I think the consensus was that too many people are just sitting there being lethargic, being like a Cartman, and just like, video games. And it's like, let's get them up, let's get them active, let's get them, golf and tennis and bowling and all that stuff. Let's actually get them in the game. So I applauded it.
Nice. I was also a fan, but not like regularly. Like certain games, absolutely. It fits, like you said, golf, few others. But if it's every game, I think I would be super annoyed.
Of course.
Yeah, and that was the thing about the Wii is it was pretty much every game. It didn't stick with just the gimmicky party games and sports games, the ones that they always marketed as families playing together in the evenings. And look, it will bring you all closer together. I was like, yeah, but can we just have a regular game, please?
Please. All right, so starting at the beginning of gaming, controllers have always been an integral part of the gaming experience, from Pong with a roto wheel to joysticks and buttons. How you interact with the game has been changing ever since. Some for good, and some that worked as well as a chocolate teapot.
What?
Never heard that term before?
No.
Chocolate teapot.
I originally wanted to say, but I can't say that on the podcast.
I'm going to go brush my teeth.
Yeah. So one of the ways developers have tried to change the in-gaming experience is making the controls feel closer to real life, but didn't exactly start out that way. In fact, the first example of an attempt at motion controls that I could find goes all the way back to 1984 with the Atari Mind Link. It was a headset that you would wear that scanned your forehead for movement. The idea was you could control the game with the raise of an eyebrow or the look of surprise. Unfortunately, though...
I'm sure this worked perfectly.
Well, I was just thinking that too. Like, imagine you're playing the game and something happens, like somebody says something and you're like, what? And all of a sudden, your whole game is ruined because you had an expression of surprise.
Guy just flies off the screen.
But considering, unfortunately, though, the MindLink never came to market because of the downfall of Atari, which just happened to be happening at the same time. So pour one out for the MindLink. Now, next up to hit the scene, of course, was the Power Glove by Mattel. It was licensed by Nintendo in 1989. As we covered in previous Gaming History 101s, the Power Glove was slipped onto the player's hand, and they could manipulate the items on screen by moving their hand up and down and sideways or by flexing their fingers.
Where else would you wear a glove?
On your foot? I don't know. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. The device worked by emitting a high-frequency sound that was picked up by 3 strategically placed sensors you would mount on your TV. Sadly, it barely functioned and ended up being discontinued not more than a year later by 1990. Now, at the time, several third-party companies came out with a few odd accessories for the NES that were motion control, we'll call adjacent. Mm-hmm. First one we'll talk about is LJN's Roll and Rocker.
Right.
It was a platform for players to stand on that contained a round bottom, allowing players to pivot in 360-degree motion.
Pivot?
Pivot! Shut up, shut up, shut up! It was intended to act as the D-pad, where the controller or the player would press the button inputs on the controller itself. Few problems. So for one, it had a weight limit of 100 pounds. So if you weren't a kid, you could not play on this thing, apparently. It also barely functions. It picks up inputs when it wants to, and it didn't sell very well, obviously, for those reasons. Next up is the U-Force by Brotabund. It was a controller that consisted of 2 large panels you would lay perpendicular to each other. And the player would use strategic hand waves over the sensors to control the game. A device used infrared sensors to capture the player's motion and translate those into inputs for the game. It worked much better than the previously mentioned controllers, but also sold extremely poorly. I've always wanted to have one of these. Have you guys ever even played on one or seen one before?
No, never.
I have. I've seen. So the last time, a couple of years ago, I went up to a little smaller retro gaming convention up in Bloomington, and somebody had one complete in box. I was going to pick it up, but my focus was on something else at the time. I'm hoping if I see one at PRGE for a decent price, I'm going to grab it.
Absolutely. And, like I said, it works fairly well. You just have to be used to what the controls are. There's a few panels, so it'll tell you what, each motion is, but supposedly it works perfectly fine. Now, Sega, though, was not immune to odd motion control devices, and the Sega Activator was their attempt at a motion control device. It was an octagon-shaped ring that players placed on the floor. Similar to U-Force, the device emanated infrared light that the player would interrupt by kicking and punching in the air. And basically, it worked as like a 3-button controller, allowing players to assign buttons to different sensors. Problem was, it wasn't terribly sensitive and led to a poor yet pretty exhausting gaming experience. However, though, Sega came out with a fighting game called Dragon Ball Z VR Versus that had extra sensors for better reaction and detection and was an example of one of the first successful full body motion sensing games. So it was a fighting game in which you could play, and it was only available in Japan in the arcades.
Of course.
I want to play that. So with the flood of gimmicky accessories for both the Genesis and the NES, the demand for motion controls kind of waned in the 1990s, which brings us kind of all the way to 2006 with the Nintendo Remote, or Wiimote, as most of us called it. It was first conceived in 2001 when a company called Gyration Incorporated approached Nintendo with the idea of a motion control device. Interestingly enough, originally the company had pitched the idea to Sony and Microsoft, who both declined. Yeah, later on, they're kicking themselves for that because they
Absolutely.
came out with their own. Now, the device went through several iterations, many consisting of similar-looking controller that would split in half to reveal a motion device. Eventually, Nintendo settled on the wand and nunchuck design. However, at one point, it was proposed to use a touchscreen for the remote, which was scrapped because it would act too much like a mobile device, Miyamoto was quoted as saying. But that design would eventually find its way to the Wii U. It's all cyclical, man. It's all cyclical.
It's like the Terminator.
Now, the Wiimote works through IR sensors and the use of accelerometers. The IR sensor was used at the front of the device to detect where the remote was being pointed, and the accelerometer was used to detect motion. As a result of combining these two technologies, the Wii and the Wiimote were a roaring success. Players could slash at enemies like they were wielding a sword. They could swing the Wiimote like a golf club in Wii Sports, or pop the device into a plastic wheel for Mario Kart. Now, this is often credited with being one of the key elements that made the Wii such a successful console. The last thing that we'll cover here, as far as the history of the early motion controls, of course, is the Kinect by Microsoft. So out of curiosity, I imagine both of you have played with the Kinect, correct?
Correct.
I have not played with the Kinect.
Oh, okay.
I have one. I've never really hooked it up to the Xbox 360 that I own.
Mm-hmm.
I did use the PlayStation Eye, though.
Oh, okay. Unfortunately, that's a little bit later.
Oh, sorry.
That I was going to cover here, but no, that's
Thanks,
perfect.
Donnie.
So, Blue, what was your experience with the Kinect?
My sister and brother-in-law had one, and they had this party game where it's with the camera, and I don't remember what the game was called, but there was a camera that filmed you and then put your actual picture in the game where you were supposed to, do the motions of running and jumping or whatever and compete with each other. And it was really fun for maybe 3 times. And then I don't think we ever touched it again.
And that seemed to be kind of the Kinect's life, right? It was fun for a couple of weeks when you were playing like Fruit Ninja or other games. And then it was like, who cares? But basically, at the time, Microsoft was like, we really need to get into this motion control stuff. The Wii is just absolutely killing it. So coming out in 2010 for the Xbox 360, it was a device that you would mount on your TV that would allow players to interact with games simply by moving around their living room. Now, the system used depth sensing technology. The unit used a near-infrared pattern projection across the space in front of the Kinect. So basically, if you want to think about that, one of those 3 dots that you see on the Kinect is actually a light beam that's shooting out that your eyes can't see. So you are being lit up, whether you realize it or not, but it's in infrared. So what it would do is it would use an infrared sensor to capture the reflected light patterns. It would be able to kind of sense depth based off of how much light was coming back. If you think like kind of like the light version of sonar in a way. So the light pattern would be deformed by relative depth of the objects in front of it, and mathematics was used to estimate the depth based on several factors related to the hardware layout of the Kinect. So basically, the Kinect would use infrared light to track your motions, and then a computer would filter out the unnecessary information and translate it into game controls. Now, the Kinect itself was actually a pretty big hit. It helped solidify Xbox 360 as the number one console in the generation, because there were several people who just went out to buy the Kinect. And in fact, one of the most popular series for that was the Let's Dance series, which is still popular today. So one of the biggest sellers for that entire console ends up being something that people and YouTubers and Twitch streamers are still playing today. So definitely had an impact on history. So motion controls, if we think about them, kind of to wrap things up here, they've lost their popularity for the most part in recent years, but we are seeing a resurgence with that with VR consoles. However, it's no surprise that gamers have always sought new ways and interesting ways to play games. Motion controls likely have a future, but we wouldn't be where we are today without these technological feats and blunders of the past. So thank you for attending today's lesson. Just a reminder, if you have ideas for a story you'd like to hear, send us a message at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com, and we might feature your suggestion.
All right. Thank you, Professor. And let's go ahead and wrap up the show. Thank you for listening to episode 43 of Gamers Week podcast. And a big thank you to the Retro Game Club podcast, the Leadist podcast, and Love Retro BTW for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to check out their links in the show notes. If you want to connect with Gamers Week, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. Email us at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com. Visit our merch store at gamers-week-podcast.creator-spring.com. Or if you want to do it the easy way, follow the link in the show notes. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/gamersweek. And finally, since you made it all the way to the end of this episode, please leave us a rating and a review to let us know how we did. We really do value your feedback. And while you're there, consider subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice. So that is it for us tonight. But again, don't forget to go over to twitch.tv/Retro Gaming Expo and check out the Blockbuster World Video Game Championships airing this weekend.
And if you see me, stop by and say hello.
And sign up for our Patreon to avoid soggy socks.
Once again, I apologize for Ryan's curses.
If you don't sign up for our Patreon, you'll be paying 10 times over retail for video games at PRGE.
Now I like that. But that's more of a serious curse than
soggy socks. That's too far. That's way too far.
Dial it back, Donnie. Dial it back.
I overstepped the boundary and I apologize.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut, patrons with benefits. This is the unscripted, patron-only bonus cast with less editing and more dirty jokes. We don't know where the conversation will go, but we're sure it will be weird.
This fish just went right on my nipple, and I'm just like,
I Google Street Fighter 6. The first search result that comes up is people think they can see Ryu's in the Street Fighter 6 reveal.
Listen up here, kids. You're not going to want to get one of those VD-STDs things, right? Make it fall off. When you go, grab a pro. You'll be doing it for America.
that was perfect.
If you want to hear weekly episodes of our patron-only bonus cast, join us at patreon.com/gamersweek.